everyone, and welcome to actually the annual meeting of the Council on Aging Board. It is time, and I'd like to open the board meeting, COA board meeting, and let you know that this meeting is being held virtually through Zoom. And I have a little bit of a statement that needs to be made, so bear with me. The town of Littleton began conducting remote participation / Zoom meetings pursuant to Governor Baker's emergency order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law on March 19, 2020. Since that time, unanticipated legal concerns relating to the open meeting law have been brought to our attention by the town clerk. Those concerns were supported by the Attorney General's office and confirmed by town council. One concern is that the chat function allows a parallel text conversation to a board's public meeting. Chat is essentially running commentary that is occurring, but it is not moderated or followed by the chair. All participants and listeners may not be aware of comments being made because some meeting participants join by phone and do not see these conversations. Another concern is conversations between residents within the chat room which are not incorporated into the public record. In response to these concerns, the town will implement the following changes, which in no way prohibit any member of the public from participating in discussion and sharing information during a public meeting, and will ensure that all listeners and participants have equal access to this meeting. People that join the Zoom meeting are set so their microphones are muted. If you called in by phone, please use *6 to mute or unmute your phone. So that the meeting can occur in an orderly fashion, we ask that people who join keep their microphones on mute so background noises do not interfere with the meeting. If you wish to participate in the meeting, please use the raise your hand function available on Zoom, or if you called in by phone, dial *9. Which will activate the raise your hand function. The meeting host will notify the chairperson of the raised hands, and the chairperson will determine whether and when to allow public comment. When called upon, participants should unmute, then state their name and address. After speaking, we request the participant return their microphone back to mute. And just so everyone knows, this is a recorded meeting. Okay, I think we can get on with business now. And I would ask the board's indulgence. We have a guest. Our town administrator, Nina, is with us. And I would request that the board agree to shift our agenda a little bit here. And instead of starting out with the first item of old business when we get to that, or starting out with the minutes, etc., and the Friends report, that we go right to, under old business, the issue of searching for a new director, so that Nina can share her time with us and then get back to some of her other duties. So I will ask if there is anyone who is not in agreement with this to raise your hand and let us know. I don't believe we need to take a vote. I think it's just if the board agrees. So, to shift the agenda. Are there any people that are not willing to shift our agenda? Okay then, thank you. There is also one other correction to the agenda I will make before we get going. And that is, I neglected when we were putting the agenda together, and three of us missed that, Patty and myself and Nicole, and the election of officers was not listed. So we need to put that under new business. So if you would pencil that in on your agenda before we end our meeting. All right, folks? Thank you. So let me just report that we are all here. We have one absent board member, but we do have a quorum. And I would remind everyone this is an open meeting and we must adhere to the open meeting laws. with that in mind, I would like to turn the meeting over to Nina, who is here to, I think, visit us about the search for a new director. So welcome. We're glad you're here.
Thanks, Marge. Thanks for
Thank you.
having me all.
Okay.
So just as a quick update for the COA board and through you, Madam Chair, the screening committee consisting of Marge, Patty, Sue, myself, and Joe Layden have been interviewing candidates for the EHS director position. It's been a very positive discussion, a very healthy discussion, and very good interviews as well. One of the challenges we have faced, as you can imagine, which you face with your meetings, is we have not been able to conduct these meetings in person because obviously the pandemic. And in our most recent conversation relative to next steps, we have two individuals we are anticipating to move forward to this COA board in accordance with the memorandum of agreement for the COA board to interview. I believe we have confirmation by one of those two individuals regarding the release of their name to what would ultimately be a public venue, so to speak, since it would be a part of a public meeting. I believe we're waiting on the second at this point, so I can't provide any names at this stage, and I would wait until we have confirmation, assuming we receive that second person's confirmation. In the meantime, we talked about bringing the subject of how this board potentially interviews those two candidates to your attention for your consideration. One of the candidates, and quite frankly, board members, screening committee members, I know Patty, you've said it a couple of times, the interviews over Zoom are not ideal. And there's a lot that can't be captured by a virtual conversation. Two-dimensional doesn't quite nearly cut it sometimes. And as a result, the question for you all is, how would you like to hold your interviews? It's completely reasonable for you to say, look, we as a group or a majority wish to continue virtually and, for the health and safety of all, or the other alternative would be to see if we can find a venue that would allow sufficient social distancing, and then, of course, request permission by the Board of Selectmen, who initially set the restriction that no board or committee could meet in person, with exception of the Board of Selectmen and Board of Health, unless requested and permission granted by the Board of Selectmen, all again in the context of health and safety for all. So I'm here to help facilitate the discussion and brainstorm with you all, but in no way, shape, or form am I here to guide you to a specific decision. I think that's truly yours to make and for you to decide on.
Thank you, Nina. So I think the question before the board is, how would you like to proceed? This will, the interview with the candidates will be, it's anticipated, could occur as early as next week. We will discuss that, when we can meet with them later. But the issue here, I think that Nina's raising is, how would you like to proceed? Would it be via Zoom or trying to set it up in person, perhaps using the multi-purpose room and having people at a designated distance, et cetera, et cetera. I do not know the exact location. So let's throw that out to you. Thoughts, comments, please. If you wish to speak, just raise your hand. Go, Ann Lee. I see your hand. You have to. Yeah, there you go.
I see no reason, as long as we're all safely apart from each other and all wearing masks, that we shouldn't interview in person.
Thank you. Others, comments, feelings?
Madam Chair,
Yes.
is the intent for those interviews to be broadcasted live or not?
Yes, they are. They're broadcasted live. It's a public meeting when the candidates meet with the board.
Then I would respect at some point a private conversation about setting up additional gear in a different location, since we have not done any broadcasting in that location for months.
We realize that, I think. I think Nina's nodding her head, so we realize that. I don't know that it's possible. We don't know if it's possible.
Right. Definitely a good point. Thank you for raising that, Kirby.
Yes, Patty, Mary.
Whatever.
I know, I've learned to call her Mary lately.
Just
Sorry.
call me whatever. I was the one who brought it up. And for two reasons. One, because I personally find Zooming in and out with the voices. So sometimes it's a hearing issue. The other reason I brought it up is when you have an online interview, you see from basically the shoulder up. You don't get to see the demeanor of the person that you're interviewing. And I just thought it would be a good idea to see the individual who's interested in being the head of our board. And then it was Nina who suggested that maybe she could talk to somebody. And I had said, if we're in a big room and we're spread 8 feet apart with masks, well, there is safety in that. So I take responsibility for being, thinking out of the box a bit. So I was the one responsible for that, and I'm admitting to it. I just thought it was a good idea.
From my perspective, Patty, I agree with you that when you're standing looking or sitting looking at a screen in a person's face, you don't get the full perspective of the person and any demeanor that they might or might not have looking around at the room with the other board members and the board members looking at them. You get a more personal contact and you feel like you're part of the overall interview and part of the person themselves as they are seeing everybody else as a person. I think you get much more when you're interviewing in person than when you're trying to do something on computer screen. So I'm 100% back you, Patty, as to why it should be done live if at all possible.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Anita. Other comments, thoughts? Yes, David.
Yeah, you have to forgive me. I didn't walk into my house till 1:25, right? So I was way behind the 8 ball trying to get set up. And I had some IT issues as far as background noise went. So I didn't hear first what you said when you introduced this subject, but you're talking about interviewing the possible candidates for human services, the new.
Yes, we are, David. Okay. The MOA states that the search committee narrows the field to 2 or more candidates.
Yeah.
And then they are interviewed by the Council on Aging board to make a recommendation to the selectmen. It's a recommendation and to the selectmen and to the town administrator, who the town administrator is a part of the search committee. So, and
right,
then so that's
right,
what we're talking about is our meeting with the individuals.
Yeah, I just didn't understand whether it was the selection board or the full COA board.
It's the full COA board that gets to interview and have their input.
In that case, I agree with everybody else that it's easier to feel and see things in person.
Okay. I mean, we don't know that this is possible to do even, but we're exploring the option.
Right.
That's all. And we didn't want to proceed, certainly asking, or making a request to the selectmen to do something like this if the full board didn't agree that they wanted to do it to begin with. So that's why we're bringing it up.
Yep.
Okay. Thank you for your input. Bob.
Yeah, I agree. I would do the same thing, meet in person if we can.
Okay?
Yeah.
And who are we missing? Maureen
Maureen Donley, I agree.
and Susan.
I agree too.
All right, so Ann Lee, you were the first to speak and you talked about doing it remotely. I don't know, is that where you
I
stand?
agree. No, we should do it in person.
Okay. So I do believe, why don't we take a vote just to make sure it's clear, and I'm not too good at record keeping here today, I don't think. So why don't I ask for your vote, and that way it's a clear, we know where we stand clearly.
Madam
So-
Chair, could I suggest a motion?
Yes, I would. Thank you.
I would suggest that the board, if it's so inclined, to vote to request permission from the Board of Selectmen to meet in person to conduct the interviews of the EHS director.
I'm so moved.
And Bob Stetson is
I'm,
seconding the motion.
no, I make the motion. Nina can't move anything.
Oh, sorry, you're right. She does. She can't have any power over us.
That's nothing personal, Nina.
No, thank you, Bob. Thanks for picking that up on me. So I approve. I'm grateful. Now,
I'll
do we have a second?
Motion. I'll
Anita
second.
has a second. Okay, thank you. So we have a motion before us, seconded by Anita, motion by Bob Stetson, seconded by Anita, that the board vote to require permission, to request permission from the Board of Selectmen to meet with the candidates in person. All right, let's take the vote. Susan,
Susan, yes.
thank you. Anita?
Yes.
Oh, would you like to
The
vote?
timing.
We'll move on to Ann Lee. Ann Lee,
Ann Lee, yes.
thank you. Anita?
Yes, I
Thank
haven't sneezed in 3 days. I don't know why that happened.
you. Bob?
Bob Stetson, yes.
Thank you. David?
David Seal, yes.
Thank you. Mary?
Mary, yes.
Maureen?
Maureen Donley, yes.
And Marge, yes. So I think we have a unanimous vote to move forward and request permission from the selectmen to hold an in-person meeting with the candidates. I have a question now. Nina, can that be brought to the select board tonight? How do we figure out this, timing of things?
We do have an item on the agenda for this evening for an update on this matter. I will bring this to the attention of the chair of the Board of Selectmen immediately so that she's, has knowledge that this board has looked at that alternative. Obviously, to Kirby's point, we definitely need to have a discussion on logistics,
Right.
how to make that happen. One thing I would ask this board to consider is, and perhaps I should have done this before you voted, but we can always revisit if necessary. Is it more important to this board to have the meeting in person, or is it more important to have the meeting recorded and or broadcast? If there was a one or the other type of situation because of logistics being very challenging, which, is something we haven't dove into with LCTV. Certainly, if the board wanted to discuss it now, we could. I don't know if that's how you'd like to spend your time at the moment, but perhaps it would be easiest to decide if one weighs more than the other.
I'm just looking and checking. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, David.
Yeah, I didn't realize that there could be a choice. But many committees right now don't televise. And I don't see any reason why we should choose televising over personal. In other words, if we can do personal and it can't be televised, that's fine with me. Okay, it can still be advertised as an open meeting and people just have to attend the old way, I guess. Is that about right, Nina?
Yeah, one scenario would be some way to have a Zoom meeting, but perhaps not the most capturing Zoom meetings so people could participate, or even having a telephone so people could dial in. But in theory, there's not going to be, I assume, participation by the public, but that's something that the board may want to discuss. I mean, it's never really recommended to have public participation, by just anyone in the public, so to speak, for an interview.
I think when we're excuse me, but if you're doing an interview and it's the board members only that are doing the interview, then I don't see having public participation. I was just I'll throw this out now since I'm speaking, but I just opened the MOA to make sure that we're adhering to the MOA, and it just says, the search committee shall select at least 2 finalists who shall be interviewed at a posted public meeting of the full COA for its vote of recommendations to the town administrator. So it doesn't say it has to be a full posted televised meeting, and I don't know where the laws are in that regard. The town clerk might have some input on that. I don't know. Do you know?
I mean, televising is not required by law. It is public participants, the public having an opportunity to attend ultimately,
Right.
is what is required by law. And in this case, if the board were to hold its meeting without it being on Zoom, or without it being on Zoom and televised, that would be acceptable as long as the public would have an opportunity to participate by listening. Participate's a little bit of a misleading, I would say, word, because it suggests that people can actually ask questions, but in theory, questions are only required by law when it's actually a hearing. And that would not be the case in this situation.
So the only problem that we could run into is if we have a large number of people who show up if it was an open meeting posted, and we had 50 people show up, we could have a problem on our hands as far as, yes, having people at
Right. And people may show up, the board or the COA, the Board of Selectmen or the COA board may say, we are going to take up this interview in person, but those who attend would not be attending in person. They would be able to attend by listening into a conference call where, they could dial in and be on mute and listen in.
But that's it, because they wouldn't really have because the chair does not have to recognize the public at any given point in a meeting anyway,
Correct.
Okay. All right.
It would make sense, I think, to me that you would do it the way that Nina just said, that we would meet publicly with the people, and somehow either through Zoom or a conference call, anyone could listen in.
Right.
Because that makes it a public meeting. They're not going to speak. Anybody listening in is not going to have an opportunity to speak or ask questions anyway, so they're just listening.
Okay.
I would agree with David. Doesn't need to be televised.
Basically, that's what we're talking about, whether it has to be televised, to answer Kirby's question, I guess it was too. So, but it is in the hands of the select board, and that's where it has to go, because they may have feelings about it too. So.
Right. And I would say to that end, there may be interest to have it televised. I just want to have a sense, since we haven't had the opportunity to work with LCTV on what the logistics might look like, that if there was a higher priority, would you prioritize having it recorded, or would this board prioritize having it in person? Well, recorded and or live. So it's kind of a two-piece question, so to speak.
So the question before us is, Nina has just stated, is the priority, our priority, if I'm not mistaken. Board members?
You got kind of garbled, whatever you said last. I didn't hear the question.
Are you talking to me, David?
Yes.
All right. Nina, did you hear Nina's comment about what our priority is?
Yes.
Okay. That's where we're at. We have,
Already used to meet in person without television if it happens.
I say, let's not put any pressure on Kirby. He's got enough already. Let's just do it not televised.
Maureen Donley, I agree.
Hanley, I agree.
I agree.
I agree.
I agree.
all right. Did we miss anyone? Bob agrees, I agree. I can agree to that myself.
Okay, thank you. That's very helpful, Madam Chair. I will bring all of this information to the Board of Selectmen and perhaps see if LCTV is available to discuss before this evening's meeting so that we can at least have a better sense of whether or not it's reasonably easy to televise or record the meeting
Well,
for public participation.
Thank you, Nina.
I just don't know if the Board of Selectmen members would like to see that as, just as the other side of the point that you had made earlier, Marge.
So that's great. And you know what? I thank you both. Kirby, thank you for, piping up and letting us know some of the complications and how it's not just an easy thing to do, that's for sure, if it has to happen that way. So, and thank you, Nina, for helping us sort this out. So, and being our spokesperson tonight when you're talking to the selectmen. So, do we have other questions for Nate? We are going to be proceeding and trying to set some times while we're meeting today that we can get together with these candidates. But we can do that. We don't need to have Nina present to do that. And I guess that's the only other job we have to think about at this moment as far as the search for a new director. But progress has been made, board members. We are at that point where we do have final candidates and we need to, put this together so that we can see them and make our recommendation to the select board as well as the town administrator. So.
And Madam Chair, the only other thing I would say, and this would be the point that I would propose jumping off of the call, is that this board discuss and consider who, other than the board, if anyone, would be permitted to ask questions during the next interview. And I ask this question from a purely selfish standpoint, not because I wish to influence the board in any way. It's on its decision on who to recommend, but so that I have another opportunity to ask questions of candidates and potentially participate. I would be at the board's comfort of whatever you decide. If you want to go about asking the questions and then I'm only permitted, for instance, to ask follow-up questions if there's a need for clarification, you can create that structure any way you wish, or you can certainly say, this is the board's interview. No one else should be eligible to ask questions. And I will not take it personally whatsoever. You need to make the best decision for what's appropriate for this large decision for the board. So, with that, I will say that, the only two people who I can think of, but perhaps you all have suggestions of others, is the town administrator, myself, and the assistant town administrator. We both participated in the screening process. The question before you is whether or not it would be appropriate for us to participate in the COA's interview process and to what extent. And because of the fact that I value and I want to make sure that you don't feel any undue pressure by me, and I sincerely mean when I say if you decide that it's only appropriate for you to take up those questions and that I can listen in only, then that is totally acceptable. And I encourage you to have a healthy discussion on it and make the decision that is best for the board. So with that, Madam Chair, unless anyone has any questions from me, I will jump off so that this board can have a conversation without me present on that matter.
Can I ask one question?
Certainly, go ahead, Nina.
After the COA board makes their decision and picks a candidate, does not the town administrator have the final say?
That is correct.
Well, if that's the case, then it's my opinion that you should have every opportunity to ask as many questions as you need to, as well as we need to, so that the correct decision and the best candidate is what we get. And if we're the only ones that ask the questions, and you have questions and don't get to ask them, I don't think it's complete, because you're going to make the final decision. And you might ask a question during an interview that's going to make that determination that you don't already have. I'm just throwing that out as an idea.
Madam Chair, I would, if with respect, I just want to jump off the call so that the board can have that conversation without me present, and you know, whatever the board decides is perfectly fine with me. I'm just raising it as a question. The only other thing I will say as a point of clarification to a comment I made, by saying that I make the final decision is a little bit flawed, because while I make the final decision on which candidate to move forward to the Board of Selectmen,
Right.
The Board of Selectmen ultimately have to then approve my selection, which
Right.
obviously takes into consideration. So that's the only thing I wanted to clarify.
Right.
I only forward one candidate to the board, and obviously the preferred scenario is that we're all in agreement on who that candidate is.
Bob Stetson, you had your hand raised. Do you want to say anything before Nina leaves?
The only thing I wanted to say was that Nina's been a part of the selection committee, so she's the one that has worked with others to do this. We can move on.
Okay. Are there any questions directly for Nina before she leaves? Anyone?
Thank you, Nina.
Thank you all. Don't hesitate to provide a contrary position if you have them. Thank you very much. See
Thank
you.
you, Nina, for coming and helping us with this. So we appreciate it.
Thank you as well.
Bye. All right, board members, I will defer to you. What are your wishes? Would you like to hold this discussion right now? We do have other business before us. So how would you wish to proceed?
The question is, please put the question.
The question is, do you wish to stay on the subject of the new director and continue? We do have to figure out dates, etc., and we need to discuss this issue about allowing other people to ask questions. Do you wish to consider this, continue this discussion now, or can we attend to some of the other business before the board and then come back to it? Ann Lee.
I say that we allow Nina and the assistant to come to the meeting and be able to ask as much information as we can get is helpful.
Okay.
I agree with that.
Ann Lee and David have spoken. Anita?
I agree. I told you I agree that everybody
Okay.
should be here.
Just double checking with you.
Yes.
Yes, Mary.
I agree. She should be able to ask whatever questions she may be, but I think our task at hand is to determine what questions we as a board are going to ask. And maybe what we need to do, each of us, is to submit a question or two to the chair, and then decide, whittle down what are the best questions as a process, like we've done with the questions for the new candidate for the board. And I think based on the questions that we put together, more than likely, Nina and or Joe, if he's at the meeting, would probably have follow-up questions based on what we ask, as well as their own questions. That's just a thought.
Well, we do have to develop questions, and Ann Esmond has agreed to be the coordinator of the questions. You know, once we
Okay.
put them together, she did make that comment the other day that she would oversee and work with us on the questions as needed. But that means that we need to be thinking about putting a list together. That is another thing that needs to happen soon, sooner than later.
But I think what Nina was saying, she will listen to what we all have to ask. Probably follow up, like kind of happened during our process, as well as her own questions. And if we're doing this in person versus Zoom, you do come up with a different question, because you're seeing the individual in person and you see reactions and demeanor, and that evokes a different perspective.
That's
And
true.
also different questions for follow-up.
Exactly. So, yeah, she's going to speak, and we definitely need her input. And we will
Bob?
get it, I'm sure.
Sorry. Bob, did you have your hand raised?
Me,
Okay. All right. Other thoughts from people not heard from here? Susan, Ann Lee, no, I've heard from Ann Lee. Maureen, David, Susan, Maureen, and David.
I already answered.
Pardon me?
I think I already answered.
Did
I'm
you?
all for it. Let her come.
Oh, you did. I'm sorry. You're right. I'm sorry. That's my mistake. I did have your name down.
That's okay.
Okay, thank you. I'm forgiven. Maureen?
I agree.
I didn't catch that.
I agree.
Maureen is in agreement. All right.
And
Susan.
And Susan's in agreement too.
Susan is in agreement too, that we will allow Joe and Nina to answer, to ask questions if one comes up in the course of the discussion that they would like to ask. And I agree with Bob, yes, they have participated, but there is a little bit of a difference here. If we are going to hold it, we don't know that we're going to be able to hold it in person. So if it's a Zoom meeting again, but still, you know, people make a response to something, a question, and then it triggers another question in someone's mind. So I can see the value in that, and the help it might provide both of them when they have to, you know, make a decision. So I also, at one point, I know it was thrown out, and I'll throw this out to the board. My thinking was, Nicole, and you can't have a free-for-all when you're asking questions. That's the problem. You can't have too large of a group. But maybe we could ask Nicole and Amy if they have a particular question they would like asked of a candidate. I don't know. And then we could ask it for them, maybe. That's one way of thinking about it, because I'm thinking they have to work with this person. So, but that's just my thought.
I think that's a great idea.
You know, they might have particular questions, and it's very hard when you're not involved, but you've got to work for the person that we're talking about bringing in. So,
Yeah, I think that's very important,
so,
that they should submit anything they have.
so
I do too. I do too. I think it's absolutely important that they have some input. And I think that's a good way to have them submit some questions that they may have.
okay. Do other board members, are you okay with that? That I could ask them, and Nicole's hearing us, and so she can just, if we agree on this, we could, you know, Ann Assman is going to, she has been the coordinator. She's done a great job of soliciting questions from the search committee and then putting them together, even, you know, understanding the intent of them and streamlining them, etc. So she has offered, I think, to help us with that once we put our drafts together. So I'll double check that with her. I hope I'm not putting her on the spot, but I do believe I heard her say that last week.
That's what she said.
That's what I thought. Okay, thank you. All right, so we have a decision that we will ask for Nicole and Amy's input on developing questions, and that Nina and Joe can be present during the interviews, no matter how they take place, whether it's Zoom or, a live interpersonal meeting. And we'll go from there. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. I don't believe we have to vote on that, do we? Really? Bob, do we need to take a vote on this?
Yeah, I would say it would be a good idea. And when you're talking about Nina and Joe, you want to make sure that they understand that they can ask questions at the interview.
Okay.
Right.
So would someone like to make a motion?
I make a motion that the board, I propose that Town Manager Nina Zarian and Assistant Town Manager Joe Lyden be afforded the opportunity to ask questions of the two finalists when interviewed for the directorship of COA.
All right, we have a motion.
Second.
Second.
And Maureen, or Susan, I think
Give it
Sue,
to Maureen.
give it to Maureen. Maureen seconded. All right, thank you, Susan. Okay, we will vote. Starting with Susan, because she's up, the first one on the screen next to me up there, so for my screen.
Susan, yes.
Thank you. Anita,
Yes.
Bob,
Yes,
Ann Lee,
yes.
David,
David, yes.
Mary,
Mary, yes.
Maureen,
Yes.
and Marge is yes. So we have a unanimous vote. Okay. And we will see what happens tonight when Nina talks to the select board as to how we will proceed to do this. The next thing that we need to quickly talk about is setting some tentative dates that we can set aside time while we're together as a group. This should not take too long. And again, it depends upon if it is a public, if it's held in person, we might not be able to pull this off. I was thinking about pulling it off the week of June 13th. It might have to go out to the week after that then, depending upon how we're going to do the interviews and what has to be done. So I guess the best way to approach this is to look at a day, maybe the middle of next week or the following, either the 15th through the 22nd. Because we're talking about getting two people together pretty much at the same time to be interviewed, one and then the other. So
this will be a special meeting.
it will have to be a
That on the
special meeting.
agenda.
It will have to be a special meeting, special COA meeting, posted, obviously, and et cetera. So, and I would suggest that we look at, we need to set a length of time for the interviews, probably an hour anyway. And then a little bit of a break in between, 10-minute break or so. I think that's what we've had, Susan and Patty. Is it like a 10-minute break between interviews that we've experienced? So you're talking about, and then maybe discussion at the end, because once you do the interview, you have to discuss both candidates at the end and make a decision. So you're talking about probably 3 hours anyway of time. And so I will leave it up to you people to come up with days and times, roughly saying a morning or an afternoon that would work for, best for you. A couple of, say, 1 or 2 times the week of the 15th and 1 or 2 times the week of the 22nd, and then we can go from there. Does anyone need a calendar?
I'm open for both of those weeks.
Anytime?
So it doesn't, anytime those 2 weeks.
I'm probably not open for the 23rd on or the 22nd on.
You are not, Bob?
I'm not.
You're not, from the 22nd on or the 23rd on. That means it has to be done next week for Bob.
Well, that, if we can do it next week, that would be really good.
If we can.
I might suggest where I'm sure both candidates have jobs now where they're working, that maybe if we could get them first thing in the morning or later in the afternoon.
I think, I know that we've done both. Early
Okay.
morning, 9 o'clock, 9:30, and then we've done later afternoon during the search committee times. So. Ann Lee, do you have any times, Maureen, I'm sorry. Go ahead. Maureen had a hand up.
I was just going to say, if we could not do it on Tuesday or Thursday, since some of us already have commitments.
That would help. Okay, avoid Tuesdays and Thursdays.
We did our interviews originally on Tuesday and Thursday.
But we can avoid it, you know, if the rest of the board members are available on a Monday, Wednesday, or Friday, it works. David?
Okay, we're talking about the week of the 22nd?
No, the
Yes?
15th.
15th. Okay, I'm available any day, anytime with 3 days' notice.
3 days notice. Any day, anytime.
Yep. I just got to put in to take the day off. And we have to post an agenda on that?
Yes.
Yes, it has to, it's a special meeting and has to get posted as a special meeting.
Do we
So,
need to post an agenda on that?
yes.
Okay, so when you post the agenda for the date, you just see that I find out about it and I'll just I'm available any day, anytime.
But you said that's the week of the 22nd,
No, 15th.
15th?
Yeah, and for that matter, the next week after that and the next week after that. Any day, anytime, just give me the notice.
Okay.
I'm easy.
I would suggest a time of 1:30.
Okay.
What did Bob say?
He's suggesting a time of 1:30, and you, Bob, you're only available the week of the 15th though, correct?
That's right.
No,
And Tuesday and Thursday mornings are out.
right. So that leaves Monday, Wednesday, or Friday. The 15th, 17th, we can't pull it off by the 15th, I don't believe.
I can't do the 15th, but
Okay, so no, that's out.
the only date.
I can't do the 19th if it's in the afternoon. I have a doctor's appointment.
So that's what we want to know. 19th, no.
The
What about
morning-
the 15th?
Pardon me?
What about the 15th?
Somebody just said they couldn't do the 15th.
Sue can't do the 15th.
Oh, I'm sorry, I made a mistake. It's the 17th. It's that Wednesday.
Yeah, I think that's a good day.
I agree.
Wednesday the 17th, and now just pick a time.
Well, probably 1:30. Bob suggested 1:30 for the time. We can try that, see if that works.
And so the meeting will run about 3 hours long after that, right?
Yep.
Okay.
Yes, it would take 3 hours, I think, if you have two people, an hour each, and then you have some discussion. And that means you have to be concise and attentive and stay on target and not get into lengthy discussions. So today's the 8th. I would have to post a meeting for Wednesday. We're talking about by the previous Thursday or Friday this week.
You have to make sure they're available too.
I know, well, that's it. And we don't know exactly that we're going to have an answer of where we're going to have our meetings either, so. I may have to come back to you. We'll do our best. Why don't I leave it that way? To pull it off.
Are Tuesdays and Thursdays not available in the late afternoons?
No, they're fine in the afternoon for me. It's the
Who
morning
said
that's,
no Tuesday and Thursdays to begin with?
Pardon me?
Who
Maureen,
was, Maureen said nothing on Tuesdays or Thursdays works for her.
Okay,
So we're talking about Monday, Wednesdays, or Fridays, either week. Hopefully the 15th, because Bob's not available after that. So why don't we leave it that way for the time being, if you trust me, and then we'll proceed and see what happens with the decision about where it's going to be and whether it's possible to pull it off that fast, if it's going to be other than Zoom. Does that make sense to everyone?
yes.
Okay,
Yes.
thank you. If so, we will have to just go back to the drawing board via email, or phone call.
We're probably not going to get everybody at every time we try to get somebody.
Well,
Bob goes away. People have.
I'm not going to be on the board either, so
You gotta pick your priority here.
well, Bob, yes, Bob?
I'm not going to be on the board next year. So if it has to be, my problem, don't worry about my being there.
Well, we value your input, though. You've been a very.
I understand, but that may be, as somebody said, not everybody can make it all the time.
I understand. Okay. Is there anything else that we need to do? I do not think so. I think we are pretty well done as far as the search for a new director agenda item. So unless somebody thinks of something in the meantime, Mary. Yes.
We're only picking one date.
I'm looking for, no. I'm going to be looking at Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays in the afternoons, it kind of as a blank thing. Does anyone have a problem with a Monday, Wednesday, or Friday in the next 2 weeks in the afternoon?
just Friday next week.
Oh, yes, Ann Lee.
And
I'm okay. The next week after that, the week of the 22nd, I can come anytime.
All right, and I know, Susan, you can't do the 15th.
I
I
can't
have
do
that
the 15th in the afternoon, but the 2 weeks after that, I'm totally open.
Okay, so scratch the 15th. That's very soon anyway.
Right.
So we will just proceed. I'll look at next week, the 17th, and somebody said the 19th. No, Ann Lee can't do the 19th. So next week, we can only look at the 17th, really.
Right.
And then it would move into the second week.
Right.
We can only, go so far in
And-
trying to figure this out, I believe.
And we probably don't want to wait too long
No,
for fear that maybe one of the candidates may be out there somewhere else and could take a position somewhere else.
no, I would like to move on this as quickly as possible for everyone's concern.
Okay,
But a lot of it, we have a lot of unknowns right now that we have to deal with, especially about how we're going to do the meeting. That's the big
Right.
one. So bear
And
with me. When I get that information, then we'll move forward on it. Okay?
people need to get questions in.
Thank you. How about setting a deadline for getting some sample, questions? Think carefully about, what you would have for a question for a new director. Jot it down and please submit them to me. How about by Friday this week? Is that fair?
yes,
Questions into me by Friday this week. Thank you. And Bob, please think about some questions, because if you can't end up participating, you have always come up with good questions. So,
Marge,
yes,
just one thing on Bob, and I'm not sure why he's not saying this. If we have to go Zoom and he's gone, he can still Zoom
Well,
from me.
that's true. I know that.
that's true. Yeah.
Okay.
So that's why I say this.
We move on.
Okay.
We've been an
That's why
hour
I said
now.
so many unknowns, correct. All right, let's go back to the beginning of the agenda. We didn't even do announcements and any reminders about anything. I would only mention to our viewers that for those who are interested, there is an update tonight at 8:15 on with the select board about the library and the status of the construction of the library. So I thought some people might be interested in that. I know there are seniors that have been following that along. And the other piece is that Nina's time with the select board will be right after that update on the library. If I'm not mistaken, it's like around 8:20 or 8:30, something like that. So if people are interested, tune into the selectmen's meeting tonight. Can we move on to accepting our minutes of the May 11th meeting quickly? I would like to point out there's one spelling correction that needs to be made. And that is on the first page where there talks about members present and members absent. It says Mark Picard and it should be Mary Picard. So I would suggest that spelling be changed in the minutes to Mary, not Mark. Maureen.
On the directors meeting, it says Nicole Sarvella. Are you using Sarvella for your minutes or are you using Lorenzen?
Well, her last name is, Nicole can answer that question. Actually, she's with us. And I noticed that our recorder, secretary, is Sue Raymond, and I'm sure she's used to Nicole. Nicole right now is showing up as Nicole Lorenzen. And so which do you prefer? I guess that's the question.
Either. It's legally Sarvella, but I haven't changed it anywhere else except my social security card.
Yeah, and she did. I noticed that in the minutes. She did use your last name.
I saw it too, yeah.
So
I'm happy to have her change it if it's easier for people.
people primarily know you as, I think, aren't used to your new last name yet. But it's up to you what you choose. So.
Yeah, we can have her change it, or we can change it back to Lorenzen until it's official here.
What?
Okay, that's fine. Good point, Maureen. I noticed that also. Anyone else comment on the minutes?
I make a motion to accept the minutes as corrected.
Second.
Thank you, Maureen. There is a motion here before the board to accept the minutes of the May 11th with the corrections made. I will have a roll call vote. Susan?
Susan, yes.
Anita?
Yes.
Bob?
Yes.
Ann Lee?
Ann Lee, yes.
David?
David, yes.
Mary?
Mary, yes.
Maureen?
Maureen Donley, yes.
And Marge Payne. Thank you all.
Thank you.
All right. So,
This is a meeting.
Oh,
do we have anyone from the Friends with us, Nicole?
I don't see it. Let me just double check. No.
Okay. I
Marge?
knew,
Are we doing announcements?
oh, yes, I'm sorry. Wait, just let me finish my comment here about the Friends, and then we can move on go back to announcements. I knew that Nancy Levine was not going to be present. I was not sure, but I do not believe there has been any activity going on with the Friends for them to report on. So we'll move forward or backward to our announcements. And go ahead, Ann Lee, if you have an announcement.
Yes, I just wanted to again say that the Baptist Church on Monday nights between 4:30 and 5:30 is giving out free meals to anyone who would like one or needs one. So please, we're up to about 50 meals a week that we're giving out, but we still can make more. So if there's anybody out there who needs a meal, please come down between 4:30 and 5:30.
Great. Thank you, Ann Lee. Do we have any other announcements? Yes, Mary.
The Congregational Church is providing meals on Tuesday night at 4:30.
Thank you.
As an FYI, you can just drop in.
Thank you very much. And I will mention that, don't forget Jamie Cruz in Springdale Farm and her program for seniors on Tuesdays. You pick up a bag of groceries for food for $15, and it's a $20 value. I would encourage people to support her. Yes, Ann Lee.
Yeah, just one more thing. At Shaker Lane School, outside the front door, there is also a food bank there for anybody who needs anything. I don't know what's there. I haven't been down, but you can just go take whatever there is there that you need.
Okay. And I see that Nina has rejoined us.
Mhm.
Are we done with announcements? I think we are. So let's see if we can find out why we are honored by Nina's presence. We're trying to catch up here, Nina, but go ahead.
Sorry to jump back on. I was just speaking with Mark Crory about logistics for the interview, and he raised an extremely important point, and that is that we have a limitation on the size of gatherings that cannot be waived. The only waiver for that is town meeting. And in looking at the language closely, it's 10 or more. So where you have a 9-member board, Council on Aging board, the 10th person would be the interviewee.
That's true.
I now realize that if you had a full board, you could not hold the meeting in person pursuant to the governor's order. Sorry for not checking on that earlier, but my thanks goes to Mark for raising that. And I wanted to bring that up to you all now.
That's true. And I had not stayed current on that. I didn't know whether there had been a change in the size of the gathering that was, allowed. So.
Doesn't
Okay.
mean that there wouldn't be a change once we actually do get to that point, but.
Well, in the interest of, we were talking in your absence about the value of trying to get this done as quickly as possible. We don't want to lose the candidates either. So,
right.
Yep. Well, that helps clarify things, I guess, for us a little bit. So we will be, yes, Bob.
Nina, since the select board made the decision to set the limits, why can't they vote to make exceptions?
We didn't.
It's actually, right, it's the governor in this case who has given that order, not the selectmen.
Okay.
Yep. Well, thank you. There we go.
The alternative, and this is getting really creative, the alternative could be a scenario by which, I don't know. There's no good alternative, but you can split the group. I don't even think you probably want to go down that road, but.
I think that would be very confusing for a candidate too. I don't think that would be fair to a candidate either, personally.
If it was 11 or more, you would be clear, but it's 10 or more.
Or like right now, today we have 8.
When it says 10 or more, what does the or more mean?
Anything high, so 10, 11, 12, and beyond cannot gather in the same room.
So actually, it's only 9.
Right.
Yeah. So we're really very pushing it, even trying to have an in-person meeting with 2 candidates or 1 candidate at a time. It makes it 10 if we're all present.
Correct.
Yes. But that's via Zoom. We don't have to adhere to those laws. So it just seems as though it would be much easier to proceed using Zoom, as much as none of us really think it's the best ideal situation.
I'm sorry that I got everyone's hopes up and
Well,
didn't realize that fundamentally important piece, but.
well, I think I wasn't thinking myself because I knew that too. So I hadn't put that together either. So don't beat yourself up too much.
I don't think any of us put it together because we really thought it would be beneficial to do it live. So we weren't really thinking of the technicality.
No.
So it just isn't going to be able to happen.
Not unless there's a big change that's announced this week. So, and then it would take time to even go back to the drawing board again, I think. And so we will proceed to call a special meeting then, realistically.
On Zoom.
Via Zoom and go forward. All right, and we've put together our questions and et cetera, and I think we're okay, pretty much, other than finding the best time, which I will work on here. I have some parameters to work within. All right, are there any other comments or from the board members about the whole issue about the interviews? Okay. And we have accepted our minutes. Under old business, I have the visibility of the COA, and I just would like to say, I think Nicole and Amy have done just a wonderful job keeping things out there and getting information out to people via Facebook and all of the social media avenues that are available to them. They've done a great job, and I wanted to compliment them on that because it's not an easy period of time to get through, keeping everybody involved, and they've been very creative in what they've been doing, I think. So, just a comment.
Thanks, Marge.
Oh, you're welcome. It's the truth. So I will ask the other board members if you have anything or any comments on the visibility of the COA before we move on. Seeing none. And I kept working group for a senior center on the agenda only to use it as an opportunity to let our viewers know that senior center is still a priority. It is not out of our minds, and it has not gone away. We still are in the midst of transitioning here and getting to become a little bit more active. So stay tuned. Unless board members have a specific comment or something they would like to share as far as a senior center goes, things are not stopped totally dead in the water. And we will be exploring avenues and things. I know that things are going to start picking up a little bit now. So, any other comments about that? I just don't want people to think that we're not critically aware of that as a priority, and it is on our radar screen. Anyone have a comment about that? Okay. Moving on to new business. Do we have any other comments under old business from anyone? All right. Under, real quickly, under new business, you have your your copy of the warrants for the town meeting. And there are 2 articles that involve seniors. And I would like to ask for you to consider voting to support these and let the select board know that the COA does support both of these articles. We have not done that yet, and town meeting is coming up on the 13th. So Article 23 is, I have my warrant here, is the property tax exemptions, Gold Star parents and senior citizens and veterans tax work-off abatement programs. And the town, you know, it's pretty much a standard thing that, and if you've read it, I put it out on the agenda so that you had the opportunity to look it up. But the Board of Selectmen has approved it, and they are supporting this, and I just think it would be nice if they knew that the COA board is also supporting that. So I will entertain a motion about that.
I move.
So moved.
I move that we let this Board of Selectmen know that we are in favor of Article 23.
Second.
Thank you, David. Okay, we'll take a roll call vote. Susan?
Susan, yes.
Thank you. Anita?
Anita, yes.
Bob Stetson?
Bob, yes.
Ann Lee?
Ann Lee, yes.
David?
David, yes.
Mary?
Harry, yes.
Maureen?
Maureen Donnelly, yes.
And Marge is a yes. And then the second article, Article 29, is the EHS revolving fund, and that does not involve any new funds. It's just a new place to be putting the funds that have been, according to our new head of finance, were not put in the correct fund to begin with, and so they're just making that correction. But again, I think it would be good that the board shows support in that. And if you look in the warrant, Article 29, the selectmen are supporting that also. It's the last article, I believe,
Mhm.
in the warrant, and that is a general bylaw change that they establish and authorize a new revolving fund pursuant to Mass General Laws, Chapter 44. I think it's section 53E 1/2 and 18-14 of the general bylaws. So, all right.
I move that the board support the motion.
Thank you. A
Support the article.
Second,
Second, was that Susan?
yes, second.
Thank you. Thank you, Susan. All right, we'll start. Roll call vote, please, Susan.
Susan, yes.
Thank you, Anita.
Anita, yes.
Bob,
Bob, yes.
Ann Lee,
Hanley, yes.
David,
David,
David?
yes. David, yes.
Mary,
Mary, yes.
Maureen,
Maureen, yes.
and Marge is yes. Thank you very much. All right. Now we get on to, we have two more items. And I know Mark Rambucker has been sitting there for a long time. And Mark has applied to fill a vacant position coming up on our board. And I would invite him to join us to talk to the board about that. Is he still there?
I am still here.
Oh, thank you, Mark. I apologize to you for, we got a little bogged down on a few things here, but we've got a lot going on really with the search for a new director. So welcome.
Yes.
And thank you for being so patient. And thank you for applying to the board.
Oh, you're welcome.
So,
So,
I would-
I don't know what you want from me at the moment, but I'll introduce myself. I'm Mark Rambucker. I've lived in town for 25 years. I've been on the library board for about the past 15. And I started working more with the COA from doing stuff with the space needs and getting the library project underway. While I was doing a lot of the space needs, it seemed like the COA needs someone to help advocate for some of their needs for space and things like that. And I told Liz at the time, when she was on her way out, I was hoping she wouldn't actually remember that I would offer to serve on the board if you needed help. And there's vacancies, so Marge reached out to me and twisted my arm, so here I am.
So thank you, Mark. And thank you. We have a set of questions that the board put together to ask. I know, but you already answered the first one. So you're very, very intuitive, I think, because the first one is, please tell us a little bit about yourself and why you desire to be on the COA board. And I think you just answered that pretty well.
You did, yeah. Very well.
Very well. So I would suggest to the board that we go along and I will just call on somebody to ask Mark. There's only 6 more questions, Mark. It's quick. So,
Okay.
And not tough. We're not really hard, tough group. So, well, maybe David thinks we're hard, but I don't know.
He's already answered question 3 anyway, so
Has he?
pretty much.
He has. So see, boy, did you share these with him, David?
No,
No.
I did not.
It just goes to show you that he knows what he anticipates things well, I think. Speaks highly of him. So Susan, I'm going to call on you. Would you ask him question number 2 if you think he hasn't already answered it?
No, I'll ask it. That's
Okay.
okay.
Thank
Okay.
you.
Hi, Mark. What is your understanding of the role of the COA and the role of EHS in general?
You mean by the COA, do you mean your board or?
The COA board.
well, your board's a little different than the library board because you're more of an advisory board than a regulatory board. I think you get to help try and guide the policies of, you don't get to set, it's like the library, you don't get to set we don't get to pick the books, but we help set the policies for how the library operates. And I would assume that the COA board is doing more or less the same thing. Though I'm not sure where the distinction lies since you're an appointed board versus a elected board. The library board has more authority than the COA board, in that like we get to hire our own director. We don't have to ask the selectmen to hire it. So I'm a little unclear as where some of those breakdowns fall. And what was the other part of the question?
The other part was the role of and responsibility of EHS, Elder and Human Services.
So I think the role of Elder and Human Services is to provide services to the population that they would like to have, right? Your role is very similar to what Park and Rec does for the community ed and the younger kids, just targeted at a different age group, right? You're trying to get people to interact, get out of their house, you know. It's a combination of social interaction and a support group to a certain extent, and you know, you're providing services to them to the elder population that they might not know that existed otherwise, right? It's part of its publicity, part of it is just social interactions.
Thank you.
All right. So moving on, Anita, I will leave it up to your discretion. David made a comment that he thinks that Mark has already answered question number 3, but if you have a reason why you want to ask him that question, go ahead. Otherwise, move on to question number 4.
I'll move on to question number 4.
Okay.
Hello, Mark. How are you?
Good.
Please detail other volunteer positions you have had. What did you actually do in that or those positions?
So I've been on the library board for a really long time. I'm not exactly even sure how long it's been. It's been at least 13 years, if not 15 years. I've been the chair of the board for probably 3 of the last 5 years. I worked hard on getting the new library built. I was appointed to the school committee for 1 year, approximately 5 years ago. I serve on the Littleton Track organization that does the road race in town. What else have I done? I'm sure there's more. I go to the PM. So with the library project, there were a lot of meetings and a lot of boards that I was on the chair boards a long time ago. When we were that was probably about 12 years ago, when we were trying to figure out the priorities of building like the fire station and the library and the council on aging. I seem to have my hands in everything.
Yeah, you are.
Oh yes, I was on the space needs.
Yeah.
Marge and I served together on the space needs.
Right. Yep, that's how I first got to know Mark. So.
Were you involved a great deal in the fundraising for the library and setting up different fundraising events for the library yourself?
So I partially, but I help come up with some of the ideas and I help do the execution, but I'm not the one that goes out and talks to people about, you know, the sponsors and things so much. I've done more direct work. My wife is the one that's done a lot of the fundraising on the library part. So there's a little difference potentially on how the trustees didn't want to be the ones doing the fundraising directly. It's better if there's a citizens group that does it. So we would be doing a lot of the work behind the scenes, but not like the public face a lot of times.
Seems like I remember there might even be some language that says that we're not allowed to do some of that.
It gets, yeah, because since we're elected versus appointed, there's some like questions about, political influence and things like that. Because, the library trustees have a lot of political cachet around here.
Right. Okay, thank you.
Bob, yes.
Can I move on to number 5?
Yes, you can.
Okay. The COA board, Mark, and it is an advisory board to the Director of Elder and Human Services. It is not a decision-making board in the sense of deciding what's going to be done. The COA board engages in various discussions on many topics, sometimes with many disagreements and sometimes in equanimity. How do you handle situations in which that could at times be contentious? You personally.
With other board members or employees,
in those discussions.
So I like to play devil's advocate on some things and make sure that when you're making a decision, you know that you're making the decision with all the information possible and that you're making the right decision. So I will sometimes be the cause of some of those disagreements. However, that doesn't mean that I don't. When a board makes a decision, you back it up 100%, whether you agreed with that decision at the time it was made or not. You don't get to question the decision. The board took a vote and made the decision, and that's the decision. I don't get to come out and poo-poo that later. I don't take any of the disagreements personally, and I hope no one else does, and I never make them personal when they are. If you're the chair, you have to kind of do. It's a different role because you're kind of trying to steer the disagreements into some kind of a consensus. So, does that help answer your question? Did I touch enough of it? Or?
That's fine because you may be the one that replaces me, and I'm a devil's advocate too. As a follow-up to that, how do you feel there's any conflict of interest in the many parts of the town that you're involved in the different boards and committees?
So the only town board I'm involved in right now is the library. I don't think there's really a conflict of interest. In fact, I think there's a lot of overlapping interests. So as the library, for example, one of the decisions was whether or not the COA got the space of the library when it was vacated, right? As a library trustee, there's no conflict of interest there because I get as much say as anyone else in town does, right? I get 1 vote out of 9,000 or whoever, right? The library project is well underway. There's no conflict of interest on, whether to build a library before a senior center. It's already happening the way it's happening, right? In fact, I think having done the library, it actually helps the COA because we've now done all the dirty work on knowing how to get things through. So trying to get things through in the current lockdown and stuff will be much more complicated.
Thank you.
So I don't think there's any conflict of interest.
Thank you, Bob and Mark. Ann Lee.
Hi, Mark. I don't think we've ever met before. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
Statistics indicate the Littleton's aging population will increase incrementally over the next 5 to 10 years. What do you believe are the greatest needs that should be addressed now to meet their growing needs?
Well, I definitely think the seniors need more space in some facility. I don't know what that facility looks like. Outside of, well, actually, I don't even know if that's a really, really hard question to answer given the current climate, right? Because even if you had more space and things, I don't know what services you're able to provide in this environment, right? Where you're not allowed to have groups of more than 10 or things like, I think for the next 6 months, I think what the COA needs is volunteers to basically do outreach and things like that, start calling your vulnerable population, right? And make sure that, people aren't isolated at their houses in 5 or 10, once our current situation changes, I think you're going to need to get people confident enough to come back out of their house to programs that you can offer in whatever facility that you can offer them in, right? And kind of switch from the social isolation sheltering back into a real social interaction and, enjoying life mode. Does that answer your question?
Keep an eye out for Charlie. Let me know as soon as you see him, if you do.
Okay, thank you, Mark. All right, we're moving on, and I think David, I think you know this gentleman here, but anyway, David has the next question.
He's muted.
Are you're muted, David. You're still muted. There you go. There you go.
Okay, so Mark, do you believe that COA board members should attend other town board / committee meetings such as selectmen, finance, planning board, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera? Have some representation, not necessarily as a full group, but at least some people attend.
Do you mean, well, I think it's important for all of the boards to have, you need to have representation at the Board of Selectmen and probably FinCom and these other boards as more of a lobbying effort. We did that quite a bit with the library, especially as we were approaching, the point of having these boards making the decision. We would make sure that someone was sitting in the audience, so that if there were any questions about the library or any other things coming up, that we were there to answer, or at least if nothing else, they could see that we cared about it, the decisions being made around it. So I don't know that you need to be at every meeting. And I don't know that the boards you listed were necessarily the right ones, but I think whenever there's an issue that's a potential issue revolving around the seniors, someone should be there. Yes. I still look at every selectman's agenda and determine which meetings to go to. I don't do that so much with the FinCom at this point, but that might change, right? So I have attended way too many meetings lately.
Yes, I can vouch for that. I think he answered that question pretty well. Thank you. Thank you, Mark.
Thank you. All right, Mary, this is our last question, and it's an easy one. Mary's going to let you know what it is.
Hello, Mark. Nice to see you again.
Hello.
I guess my question is twofold. When I'm finished, you can ask us any question. But why are you interested in being on the board? Either you said it and I missed it, but I'm curious. Why the COA board? You seem to be very attuned to the library. What's the connection?
So when we were going through all the space needs stuff, it became clear to me that I don't think the COA board is well represented externally. To you need better advocacy to get a new senior center than you currently have. I think you need to have more of a public face and a presence at the selectmen's meetings and these other things. And I would like to help you get a new senior center. And I became involved more with the COA through the library building project, right? And the space needs. And I think it just seemed like you needed more, I don't want to say political firepower, but you needed more oomph behind some of the things you were getting. And I'd like to help you get a new senior center.
Okay, but do you also, just as a follow-up, do you know what the primary Health and Human Services is?
I'm sorry, you broke up.
That's a loaded question, I know.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear the question. I got.
Say it again, Mary.
It's what is the mission of Health and Human Services?
Mm.
The mission, I don't know what your exact mission statement is. I would assume the mission of Health and Human Services is to provide services to the Littleton community, meet the needs of the health and mental, physical well-being of the Littleton community.
Okay.
Specifically the elders, or the disabled, or whoever needs help, right? I know it's not primarily to get you a new building, but I think a new building will help.
I was sort of missing that along the line, and I just wanted to see if you had it. I know
Mary's breaking up.
library in the building.
You're breaking
I just
up,
wanted to
Mary.
get on-
You're breaking up. It's hard for you're breaking up for some reason.
Oh, I don't know why.
I don't either, but
Thank you,
Okay.
Mark.
No
You
problem.
responded to my question.
okay. All right. Thank you.
And if there's any concern, I work from home full time now, so I can make any of your meetings.
Just let me ask you, do you have any questions for us, Mark? And I want to clarify one thing, though. The primary function, really, of the board is to work closely with the Director of Elder and Human Services with regard to the senior portion of her job, or his job. And to, work collaboratively with them, and we come to agreement. We might have a disagreement about the priority of a particular event or something, but generally you work it out, and it's working with that person. And also, as you mentioned a little bit ago about our visibility and the fact that we need to get out there, and we need to be putting forth some of the issues to help the director not be the only one out there. It's the COA board and the director working together, and the COA board has 9 shoulders, that people can fall back on. So that is one of the primary function. It is to certainly advise and suggest senior activities and focuses and things of that nature. And we are an advisory group only, but we really need to work with the director as a team. And so sometimes, okay, the director wants something, we don't understand why, but if we can come to grips with that, then yeah, we need to support the director. So that's basically it. But let me now go back and say, do you have any questions for us?
So your relationship is basically this: the library has the exact same structure, except we're not advisory, right? We have a director who does the day-to-day operations, and he comes to us and asks us for things, and we approve them or not. We question him. We have a friends group that we work with that does a lot of our fundraising for us, and contributing a lot of things back. So we have a lot of the same relationships.
Right.
Yeah. So
I'm familiar with the fact that, and your friends groups operate a little bit differently than our friends group does, but you would learn that too, as you were.
Yes.
So. Any questions for us?
Is Bob the only one stepping down?
Yes, Bob is the one person that is stepping down. We have 3 board members who are up for reappointment because all 3 of them, their terms are expired. Anita is one, and we will be addressing that as soon as we have finished with you. But Anita was appointed for a 1-year term, filling, a vacated position a year ago. So she has reapplied for a full 3-year term. And then Ann Lee and David, their 3-year terms are up, and they have reapplied to stay on the board. So we will talk about that too. But there is 1 vacant position, you're right.
And I've been on the board for so long that I can't even remember when it was when I started. It's around 1994. So
And it's a very sad thing because, you know, Bob is stepping down and he might be here for a special meeting to interview. We don't know that yet, depending on when we have it. But he's been a wonderful board member and it's kind of hard. You can't even have a little reception when you're doing Zoom. So,
Yes.
so
Yes,
anyway.
we've done the same thing with, yeah, I've been, like I said, I've been a library trustee for, I think, well, I have another 2 years on my term as a trustee, I think. And then I'm hoping to step aside because it's been like, I think that'll make it 16 years.
I hear you.
And it's time for new blood.
Yeah. So we've gone through the questions, but you know, Maureen hasn't gotten to say a word, so I'm going to ask her if she has a question for you that she would like to have answered before we, you know, move on. Maureen?
Hi, Mark. I'm just curious as to how you feel, how important do you feel it is to have a good relationship with the director so that we can be of assistance in any way that the director needs?
Well, I think if you don't have a good relationship with the director, it won't work well. You have to have a good, if you don't have, the board has to support the director has to support the board. If there's a contentious relationship, then it just doesn't work well. In the library, it's a little different in that we have control over our director and that we have hiring, firing authority where you don't. I don't know what happens if you have a director that you don't work well with, but if you didn't work well with them, it's hard for you as the advisory board to get what your changes you want implemented. And it's hard for the director to get, if you don't present a unified front between the director and the COA board, then it's very hard for you to get a good presentation externally to the Board of Selectmen or anyone else to address your needs, because you can't even agree internally. How do they know how do they know which way you should proceed when you can't agree? So you have to have a good working relationship.
I agree. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Thanks, Mark.
Do you know what the appointment date is now that I have to show up to a Board of Selectmen meeting?
No, it's usually, I don't know the exact date, but generally it's their last meeting of the month. So, but I haven't seen that yet. So myself, I'll let you know though what happens.
I'm sure you will.
So, well, I don't want to lose anybody here, you know, and lose track of anybody. So, but the board needs to take a vote, and it's an open meeting. So I would enlist entertain a motion.
I make a motion that we vote to accept Mark as board member. Is that
Second.
Yeah, the motion would have to read to recommend to the Board of the Selectmen that they accept Mark as a board member.
Right, the
Okay.
wording, yeah, the recommendation goes to the Board of Selectmen, so,
I make a motion, we recommend to the Board of Selectmen that Mark be accepted as
Second,
a COA board member.
thank you. The motion has been made by David and seconded by Bob that we recommend to the Board of Selectmen the appointment of Mark Rambacher to our board. All right, we'll take a roll call vote. Susan?
Yeah, Susan, yes.
Anita?
Anita, yes.
Bob?
Bob, yes.
Ann Lee?
Ann Lee, yes.
David?
Yes.
Mary?
Mary, yes.
Maureen?
Yes.
And Marge is a yes. Well, welcome, Mark.
Well,
So-
thank you. I didn't expect it to get David's vote.
I was going to make a comment and then I decided, well, that's not very professional. I guess I won't.
It's all right, I'm used to him.
I'm used to Mark too now because I have served on the Space Committee with him. And so, yeah, when he says he can be the devil's advocate, he can be. Just a warning. But he's very great. He's good to work with and fair and square, and from my experience. So.
Yes.
So welcome, and I'll be in touch. We do have a manual and all of that, but you know what? With all of this virtual stuff, who knows what shape anybody's manual is in, because we've had changes in our rules and regs even and things of that nature, but I'll be in touch with you. And
Mine's
I'll
up-
keep you informed
Mine's
about
up and
when,
regular.
pardon me, Bob?
Mine's up and ready, and I can hand it over to you, and you can turn it on for him.
Oh, thank you. Well, that's very nice of you. I'm really going to miss you. I mean, not that I'm not welcoming you, Mark, but Bob he's the one that got me involved way back when, Bob. I was actually, when I think about it, so. All right, moving on. We have 3 board members real quickly, and I know David Sill said you have to leave, David, by 3, and it's already 3:11.
Well, I was just texted by the person who's coming to my house. I was just texted by him. He says, text me when you're available.
Oh, wow. Well, it's okay. We're getting there.
Yeah.
We have your appointment and Ann Lee's and Anita's to their reappointments. And we do not have set questions for reappointments to the board. Patty might have a question. I know she and I had talked about putting some questions together, but we didn't get it done in time for everybody to have input. So I would suggest to the remaining board members, if you have a question of any of our incumbents who are seeking reappointment from the selectmen, to ask the questions now, and I'll go around.
Are you willing to serve?
They're willing.
Yes.
They all have said they want to come back. That's a great thing, I think. So, but Susan, do you have any questions for any of them? Go ahead.
I would just like to have them talk about what they see as the most important thing for the board in the future. I know the answer is going to be senior center, but let's put 2 priorities then.
Okay, good question. Yeah, so you're going to have to think, guys.
Sorry, guys.
So do you want to go first? Let's see. We have Anita, Ann Lee, and David.
Yeah.
Who wants to jump in?
I will.
Ann Lee. Okay.
Yeah, I've enjoyed being on the board this last few years, and have learned a lot. This is my first time in local business, and have enjoyed an awful lot. I look forward to making a relationship and getting to know our new director. So that we can see where his or her priorities are and how we can work together as a board and the new director. Also, of course, the senior center, look forward to seeing this through and, seeing what we can offer as new programs for our senior center. Our seniors and the folks who aren't quite seniors, but we still reach out and help them.
Great. Okay. Do you have any other questions, Susan, for anyone else? Or do you want to move on to somebody else? David?
Okay, well, Ann Lee has pretty much said it all. So I'll just speak. I'm really looking forward to helping get a senior center going. Okay. And part of my concern is just getting through this COVID thing, because it just affects everything that we try to do, no matter what board or what part of town you're in. It's always, well, oh, you can't have more than 10 people, or you got to wear a mask, or you got to do this. And that's all getting old, and I just think it's holding us back a little bit. I'm very interested in helping to find a new director, so that'll be very good. And I'm looking forward to the next 3 years. I still feel young, so I got plenty of energy left. Thank you.
And my biggest reason for wanting to continue is I really think that we really need to get out in the public the whole EHS side of the Council on Aging. Everybody thinks of us as an old people's board, and just old people are served. And it's important that more and more Littleton residents realize that we will help anybody and everybody in any way that we can, And I don't think that's out there to the extent it should be. I was not aware of how much we do for the people who are under 60 who need help. And we see that more and more over the 1 year that I've been here. I've seen a lot more of that than I heard that we had been doing. So I think that's important. I'm really happy that Mark is on the board. I think that's a good step in the right direction because he is not 60 or old, and he can maybe bring people in more his age or figure out ways of getting people his age and even younger involved in the COA and EHS. And I think that ultimately will help in the development of a senior center, because the more people you have involved, the better you have.
Great. Thank you. Bob, would you like to ask any of the incumbents a question? Bob?
I think he's shaking his head no.
No.
I think so too. All right, I will go to Mary. Do you have any questions for any of the incumbents?
I'll ask them one question. Might be a kind of a loaded question, but you know me. Is there anything about the COA board that you dislike, that you would like to see improved upon or eliminated? And identify either situation and how you would rectify the situation.
True. Let me try that one. I don't know if I can answer all of that, but in the course of the conversation in the last 5 minutes, excuse me, it just occurred to me, we're the Council on Aging, and we're part of Health and Elder and Human Services, okay, which has got a whole lot more functions than the COA does. And we are the COA advisory board. So I don't know how far our advising can extend into Elder and Human Services. And I was wondering, actually, let me ask you guys the question, is exactly to what extent can we involve ourselves in the other part of that? Because we're COA, we're not EHS board, we're COA board.
That's a good question.
So what do you think, Marge?
Well, personally, it's Elder and Human Services.
Yep.
The COA board is involved in the elder piece, more
Yep.
so than the human services piece.
Yeah.
Right.
However, there is an overlap in some ways sometimes, but our primary focus is the elder piece. That's what the Council on Aging is focused on.
Yeah.
But we can't ignore the fact that if we're looking for a director, that position involves dealing with the human services piece of things, for example, that we have to find somebody who is qualified to manage seniors as well as everybody else, under age 60 to age 20, because that is part of the job. And so, but obviously the director's main, focus is on both. And elders take up a good portion of the director's time.
Yep.
And the programming and everything else. So yeah, we're not directly involved as a board in the human services piece of things, except when it comes to maybe a wellness fair for seniors and making sure the seniors get to the wellness fair. And there are, vendors at a wellness fair that are appropriate for seniors. So yeah, there's an overlap there, but the board is not really focused on that. We're just focused on the elder piece of things.
Correct.
Yep.
But it's always nice. It was always nice when we heard about the other side, things that were happening, that Liz used to tell us.
Yep.
Okay, it just kind of made me feel good that we were helping, all the way down to babies. Okay, so
Right.
that was good, and it would be good to be involved to what extent we're able to and what extent we're allowed to. I'd like to see
Right.
some of that.
I mean, we've had the wellness fairs in all age groups come to that, but it was Elder and Human Services, the COA. I used to man the snack table at those wellness fairs when we had them, etc.
Yeah.
So yeah, there is an overlap, but and somebody mentioned the fact of having volunteers in that 40 to 30 to 50, say 59 age group, and having them, you know, working with human services piece of things, but also with elders. And so,
Yeah.
Yeah, complicated in a way, but all right.
One of the things that I would like to see happen with our board and the members of our board going forward is when we talk about visibility of the COA, when we can get up and running with Sue and I with our television program, I would like to entertain inviting each member of the board at a different taping so that the citizens can be aware of the names and the faces of the COA board and show some visibility in that way. I think that's an important aspect, that everyone in town don't hear the name Marge Payne or Sue Melander. They hear Marge Payne and they go, oh, I know who she is. I've seen her on TV at meetings, or, you know, I've seen her do this or that, just so that everybody is aware. We've only done 2 TV shows, but I have been, before this whole thing happened, been in Donlands and even in a store in Westford, and have someone come up to me and say, oh, you're Anita, you were on the COA TV. So I think more of that needs to happen. We have to become more visible.
It's so right. And, you know, I'll never forget the day I was in Kmart in Acton. This was a couple of years ago. And this man was a total stranger to me, walked up to me and said, oh, I've seen you on TV before. Where have I seen you? You know, and then remembered.
Right.
So
Right.
it does have an impact. You're right. You're absolutely right.
And I didn't know the 2 people who spoke to me either. So I think I mean, we need to be out there.
We do need to be out there, and we've gotten in touch with that this past year, and there's a lot more we can do. And I thank you, Mark. I think Mark's going to be helpful with that piece of it for us. So, all right, Patty, are you done?
I want to hear from Ann Lee.
Yeah, one thing that I don't know that there's anything I'd like to change other than to add on to the visibility part of this whole thing so that we can get people on board with the senior center, with the, you know, elder and human services. I'm sure there are lots of people out there. I didn't know until I came on this that it was the COA was the COA, and all I thought about was, you know, the elders in the community and not the human services part of this whole COA board and department. So promoting that so that maybe people know more that what services are out there besides services just for the elderly.
Remember, I think too, that, you know, there's that phrase intergenerational. So, and that covers a huge thing. So, okay.
Okay, Marge, I have to leave the meeting.
Oh, well, we can take a vote without you.
Oh,
I think we're at that point real quick.
what are we voting on?
I will entertain a motion. And with my advisor over here, I'm going to lose. Mark's going to have to take that role, I guess, or something. Bob, do we have to do an individual vote to reappoint, or can we do it as a group? We have to do an individual, I'm thinking.
You can accept the slate.
We can, well, okay, thank you. That's what I was wondering. All right. So I will entertain a motion.
I
for
move
board appointments.
I move that we re-elect the slate of new board members for
We
reappointment.
recommend to the Board of Selectmen that they reappoint the slate.
So moved.
The select, we have a motion on the table and seconded that we recommend to the Board of Selectmen that they reappoint Ann Lee Ellis, David Sill, and Anita Harding to the COA board. Correct?
Correct.
Okay, thank you. All right, the motion is there and seconded. We will have a roll call vote. Susan,
Susan, yes.
Anita,
Anita, yes?
Bob,
Bob, yes.
Ann Lee,
Ann Lee, yes.
David,
David, yes.
Mary,
Mary, yes.
Maureen,
Maureen, yes.
and Marge is a yes, and David. So see, everybody, we are all done and set to go, and thank you,
All
everyone.
right, I have a visitor, so I have to
Oh,
leave.
you can, yep, you can leave. I think we're getting there toward the end of our meeting, except we have election of officers, which you're gonna miss, but we do have to
Let's
take
do it.
care of that today. So, all right, we have moved down to election of officers, which I don't know how Patty and Nicole and I all missed that. It had to be on the agenda today. So, we changed the procedure that we're using, and the chair can accept nominations for the chair and the vice chair. Those are the two officers we have on this board. And we can take a vote. We eliminated having a nominating committee, if you all remember last month. So,
I nominate Marge Payne for chair.
Second,
okay, we have a nomination for chairs for, and it's seconded, a nomination by Ann Lee and seconded by Maureen Donnelly regarding the chair. Are there any additional nominations for the chair? Is there any discussion?
Great job, Marge.
Yes, good job, Marge. We don't want to change it.
Well, thank you. Am I doing this right, Bob?
Yeah,
Yes,
take your vote.
All right. It has been moved and seconded that Marge Payne be reappointed, elected chair. We will do a roll call vote. Susan,
Susan, yes.
Anita,
Anita, yes.
Bob,
Bob, yes.
Ann Lee,
Ann Lee, yes.
David,
David, yes.
Mary,
Mary, yes.
and Maureen.
Maureen, yes.
All right. So unanimous vote. Thank you. Marge chair, yes. I didn't vote for myself. I'll vote for myself. Okay. Vice chair, do we have any nominations?
I would move that Mary Patty Hunt be made the vice chair if she's willing.
Second,
We have a motion by Bob and seconded, but was it Ann Lee?
Yep, well, both, yes.
Okay. That Mary, i.e. Patty Hunt, be nominated if she accepts to the position of vice chair. Do we have any additional nominees?
Don't know those big ones.
Any discussion?
Great
None.
job, Patty.
All right. All right, we'll take a roll call vote. Susan,
Susan, yes.
Anita,
Anita, yes.
Bob,
Bob, yes.
Ann Lee,
Ann Lee, yes.
David,
David, yes.
Mary,
Yes.
Maureen,
Yes.
and Marge Payne, yes. Thank you all. And I think thank you. So, okay. We have one more issue that we need to discuss now because then this one's critically important. Oh, yes, Bob.
Bob's
I
good.
just wanted to express to everybody that I very much appreciated our chair and our vice chair over the past year and all that they've done to keep the board moving, and even in the midst of the pandemic and everything else. So thank you very much.
Yeah.
Thank you. Well, you know, it's been fun. Nicole has been a big help too. We have to remember that. Nicole's right there with us, and it's been a three-person team effort, I must say. And this last time around, I realized how lax I have become, so relaxed that I don't even open some documents when I should. And I've learned a lesson this time. So, I put it off until the last minute. But we have another issue, and this is important. Mark's still with us, and it has been tradition, I will say, since I've been on the board, to not hold a COA board meeting in July. The board always has voted to not meet, and once the June meeting was done, only meet again for a regular meeting, the second Monday of the month in August. And I am throwing that out to the board to acknowledge that and to ask how you're feeling about that. We do have to have a special meeting regarding the director, so it does not mean the special meeting won't occur. And a special meeting means that it is occurring on a date other than the regular monthly meeting date for the board. So we need to decide whether or not you want to meet in July.
I move that we omit July and meet in August.
So moved.
There we go. I don't think that
Can I
there's
ask a couple questions before you vote?
pardon me,
Sure.
we do need them. Yes, Mark.
So when do you expect to have a new director in place?
I would say it would not be until July anyway, even if we get this, we are looking at, you were here and saw the discussions that have gone on. But I know from talking with Ann Esman that it would take probably realistically until July sometime before you get anyone on board, even if we get the decision made, and get the information to the selectmen. That'll be probably toward the end of June when we get our recommendation to the selectmen, and then it takes time. Yeah, I would be July or August. That's my guess. That's just strictly a guess.
So, okay, I was just going to say that if you're going to have someone on board, you don't want them to be waiting too long before they have their first meeting with you.
Right.
So
Right.
if they're coming on in early July, I would suggest holding your August meeting at the end of July. Whereas if they're coming on in mid-July, then a normal time for the August meeting would be fine. So
Yeah.
I think you can skip one of the 2 months potentially, but I don't know that you want to let the director,
No, we wouldn't.
for a month without meeting.
I agree with
So-
you. No, I agree. And it depends on, a lot of things, but I would guess, I mean, from everything that we've been been told and led to believe, it would be July sometime anyway, by the time, if you think about it. So they have to give notice. If, it all works out, we don't even know if everything's going to work out, and we're going to have somebody that accepts, but I would guess that July's probably going to be okay not to have a meeting. You're not going to have a meeting the first day that somebody starts either.
No.
So. But, was there any other discussion about that? We had a motion on the floor.
Yes, we do.
And it's been seconded.
Okay, who seconded that, just in case Susan didn't catch it?
Actually, Maureen said so moved. I don't know if that means second.
I think she means seconded, yes. So I believe the motion was made by Bob, correct? And Maureen seconded.
No, Ann Lee.
Ann Lee, sorry, Ann Lee. Ann Lee, and then Maureen. I just know that Susan sometimes can't get it all unless I repeat it. So we have a motion on the floor to not meet in July. And it has been seconded.
For our regular meeting.
For our regular meeting, which would have been July 13th. We are voting not to meet on July 13th, 2020. All right. Is there any further discussion about that? It's relatively early in the month, so I'm pretty comfortable thinking that even if things progress with a new director, it's not going to be a big difference. Because, and then the August meeting is early in the month too, so, yeah. All right, are we ready to take a vote? No further discussion? Susan, I'm going to, last roll call, not quite the last vote, but Susan.
Susan, yes.
Nita?
Anita, yes.
Bob?
Bob, yes.
Ann Lee?
Ann Lee, yes.
David?
David, yes.
Mary?
Carrie, yes.
Maureen?
Yes.
Marge is a yes. So there will be no meeting on July 13th. All right. We are up to our reports. And
Okay.
I sent out to you, yes, Bob?
Are you going to appoint committees? That's on your agenda.
Appoint what committee?
Board member appointments.
We did that.
Well
Oh,
done.
that's okay. You weren't referring to the board committees. You were referring to the reappointment. Never mind. That's fine.
Board member appointments, yep, okay.
Okay, before you start, I'm gonna step out now, though. I got
Okay,
somebody
thank
at the
you,
door.
David. Thanks,
Okay,
David.
bye, everybody. See
Bye,
you soon.
Dave.
Hey,
Bye.
David.
I have to leave also because we're giving out the meals tonight.
Okay, thank you, Ian Lee, too.
Yeah,
And thank you,
thank you.
David. And Mark, just so you know, I try to get us done by 3, and today I failed miserably at that objective. But anyway, most of the time we're done by 3. But we have quickly the director's report, and I sent out to the board Nicole's report. I don't know if she wants to quickly go over it and highlight anything. And with that, I read it. I'm going to excuse myself for 1 minute and I'll be right back while you do that. Is that okay?
Okay, sure. So I kind of combined the director report and the outreach report. I wanted to mention that over the past month, we got 2 large donations. We got a donation from Jessie Clicks, which is she's a photographer in town. She did this front steps project where she took pictures of people on their front steps from a social distance. And instead of getting paid for that, she asked them to donate to us. So we got a large check from her for $4,500. And we also got a check from the Morrison Fund for $2,500, which goes to TRED. So those are ones that we've gotten in the past month. Elder and Human Services was awarded a collaborative grant that is worth $30,000. We're going to be working with the towns of Acton and Boxborough to provide programming to fight isolation, depression, substance abuse, etc. We just met. We had our first virtual meeting last week to kind of talk about what that will look like and when. So stay tuned. And I also just applied for a grant to get 2 GPS systems for our vans, which we don't have. So we're using printed out directions. And our trips are getting longer. We're doing a lot of Burlington trips, a lot of far distances. So this will be huge if we get it. And then everything else is just things that we're doing. We're doing still the food pantry every other week. We're doing the social anxiety group, Living Alone. We're starting our Life Ahead group this month. And starting in July, we're going to do a virtual coffee hour once a month. And I wanted to mention that our rental assistance program is still accepting applications. We also have a new emergency rental assistance program that is, it's short term. It's only for 3 months, but this is for people who have been affected by COVID. They've been laid off or their hours were cut, then they're eligible for this as opposed to the regular rental assistance program.
Nicole, do we have to vote on the 2 grants to accept them?
No.
No, I guess there's a new policy. I filled out 2 forms and sent them over to the Board of Selectmen and they approved them.
Okay, fine. So we don't have to do anything with those.
And
Are
that's,
there any emergency funds available for people with mortgages or taxes that they haven't been able to pay because of COVID in the same line as the rental program?
No, neither of the rental assistance programs are approved for mortgages, only for rent.
Okay.
and to get back to Bob's comment, prior to the arrival of our new finance director, Bob, the grants, different, fund contributions always came before the board, but our new finance director does not feel that is necessary, and so that is not happening. But I've asked that the director and Nicole, keep the board informed, because it's important for the board to know what's going
Right.
on.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's great.
Yep. So, all
I
right.
move that Nicole's report be accepted.
I have
Second,
a motion to accept Nicole's report. Seconded?
second,
Thank you. Who was that? Susan?
Susan.
Susan. Thank you, Susan. Okay, roll call. We're getting down there, ladies and gentlemen, but Susan,
Susan, yes.
Anita,
Yes,
Bob,
Bob, yes.
Mary,
Mary, yes.
Maureen,
Yes.
and Marge is a yes. And so we have, let's see, 7 of us. Okay, we still have a quorum. That's good. All right. Then moving on, we do have the outreach group coordinator's monthly report, and I think kind of that Nicole covered that. Did you not?
Yeah, most of it. I mean, the numbers are still down. They're pretty
Right.
comparable to April.
I did forward out the Excel spreadsheet to the board members so they could see that, and
Oh,
that's
good.
where the numbers are reflected. It's
Right.
hard, nobody can print it at home because it's legal size paper, pretty much.
Right, I
But
know.
they did get it online and they could look at it, so, yeah. If you have
Yeah,
any questions
yeah.
for Nicole about that, though, speak up. Anybody have any questions about those figures? And that's something Mark, I noticed Mark is still there. The outreach coordinator, the outreach department does an Excel spreadsheet on the numbers, what and of course with COVID, the contacts are high. They have worked out a plan to maintain contact with people, but the numbers are down, obviously, than they are when everything is up and full running. So, any other comments about that?
I would move that we
All right.
adjourn, move to adjourn.
I was just going to ask for that, Bob. You're right on top of things. But before we do, I really would publicly like to thank you and applaud you. It's so it feels like it's not enough in saying and thanking somebody for their service in a Zoom format. Normally, we would have some kind of a reception and something, to acknowledge your service to the town. But I want to
appreciate
thank
it.
you for that. You've been great and a loyal and committed person to work for and support seniors, and seniors that know you realize that, I know. So thank you very much.
I appreciate that.
Yeah, and we will miss you. But have a good time. I know why you can't be around in June, because you're going up to your place in Maine, I bet.
Yeah.
So, and I don't blame you one bit. So, enjoy your summer. All right, now I will entertain a motion to adjourn the meeting.
So moved.
Second,
Second by Susan. Thank you. Susan,
Susan, yes.
Anita,
Anita, yes.
Bob,
Bob, yes.
Mary,
Mary, yes.
Maureen.
Maureen, yes.
All right, and Marge is a yes. Thank you all. That's been a rather long meeting, and I apologize for that, but we had quite a bit to deal with. So, and important things, and the director's position is important, so important, critically important.
Send questions.
Pardon me?
I said.
Yes, don't forget, questions by the end of the week. I'll send a reminder out to everyone. Questions for the anticipated interview of the candidates for the director's position. So, thank you all. And I
Take
think we
care.
are done.
Have a good day, everyone.
You too.